I'm just realizing that I was muted for the first 5 minutes of that. So that's fun. I apologize for that. We'll kind of get back going here a little bit. I'll start with, I'll kind of recap what I said earlier. It's about just, you don't need to put any kind of qualifiers on this game. Pitt won a game pretty decisively against a good team. It's what Jeff Capel said. It's what the numbers told you coming into this game, and it is what it really it really looked that way on the court. The Panthers got challenged. It was good for them, and they did kind of exactly what you want, or at least what a coach would want out of a game against a mid-major team at home early in the non-conference schedule, which is they struggled a little bit. They came away with some stuff to work on, but in the end, they still walk away with a double-digit win, and that's a completely ideal scenario for a team like this who's still kind of figuring themselves out, but is also looking ahead to next week, a stretch of 5 games in a row against high major teams, Power 6 teams. They're going to face a murderer's row soon, and this was a really good opponent to test themselves against, especially because through those first 2 games, we looked at their defense and we thought they were going to really be a super strong defensive team, and they got challenged and they got exposed a little bit in certain ways. Some of the things that they were able to get away with against North Carolina A&T and Binghamton, they weren't really able to get away with in this game. Thinking specifically about the way they got taken off the dribble, the way they defended the perimeter, that stuff was challenged, and there was stuff that they needed to adjust to. And I'll start with, like I said, Florida Gulf Coast is a really talented team. They've got experience. They're led by their guards who are really good. I mean, I said this while I was muted, but this is a team that you could easily see not just making the NCAA tournament, not just winning the Atlantic Sun, but making a run a little bit in the NCAA tournament, winning a game or two. They have all kind of the ingredients that teams that mid-major teams that make runs in the NCAA tournament have. Like I said, the experience. They shoot the 3 really well. They shoot a lot of threes. They play a fast tempo and run in transition. So this was a good team for Pitt to get tested on, not just, matchup wise, not just because Pitt had been so good defensively and needed to get challenged defensively, but because this is just, again, a plainly good basketball team. I mean, they took Indiana down to the wire in their season opener. And that was another team that had a ton of size that they were able to navigate. I mean, I was pretty impressed with the fact that Florida Gulf Coast's size didn't exactly show up on paper. When you looked at the roster, I think they only had one guy who's 6'10", but they've got some weight and they've got some muscle to them that really challenged Pitt on the inside. And as for how that affected Pitt, I mean, they did a good job shutting down the three-pointer. Florida Gulf Coast shoots the threes at the 5th highest rate in the country coming into this game, and they made them at the 73rd highest rate coming into this game. But, Pitt held them to, I think, just 24 3-point attempts overall. And then the Eagles shot it at just 29% for the game. So a good effort on the perimeter defense, but, as far as shooting defending threes went, but I think it came at the expense of some of their interior defense. I think Pitt got extended trying to defend the perimeter, and it came at the expense of their ability to defend dribble drives. Thought they were overextended in a lot of ways, and that wasn't good. It created driving lanes for the Eagles that put Pitt's bigs in bad situations again. I mean, this was something that we had talked about going back to the Binghamton game, and even I thought a little bit against North Carolina A&T, to the extent that a team like that could do that. Pitt has nuclear deterrence on the back line. They've got Fede Federico, who's one of the best returning shot blockers in the country, period, not just in the ACC. But, Jorge and Guillermo Diaz-Graham have improved in ways, not just physically, but, mentally, and their ability to see the floor and time up blocks to make them really good shot blockers as well. But, you put those shot blockers in poor situations, and you can have scenarios like, guys getting into foul trouble, which did happen at certain points in this game, if you don't play good perimeter defense. Good interior defense starts with good perimeter defense. In the first half, Florida Gulf Coast won points in the paint by 2. In the second half, Pitt won points in the paint by 4. And there was a pretty noticeable difference in Pitt's ability to defend man-to-man on the perimeter in the second half that led to kind of an improved defensive showing overall. Blake Hinson, like I said, he challenged his team. He said a select few, but I think it was a challenge for the entire team to defend better man-to-man on the perimeter. He's included himself in that statement, said I need to be better in that sense too. And I think they didn't do as well at that against a good team. Understand that qualifier, but and a team that is built to challenge you on the perimeter. But I don't think they did that very much in the first half. If you can't defend the perimeter, if you can't keep your man in front of you, either on the dribble drive or if you're not watching your man, he can cut back door. And like I said, that just puts shot blockers and your bigs in poor situations. But Pitt made some adjustments. They rotated a lot better in the second half. There was one defensive possession that I thought was really good in particular, and we'll talk about this guy in a second. Just everything he did on the floor tonight I thought was great. But Jalen Lowe, he's on the help side, and Ish Leggett goes over to double one of the bigs. Jeff Capel said that was one of the big adjustments that they made in the second half, was to try to help out their bigs a little bit and neutralize some of the advantage in weight that those guys had. But Leggett goes over and doubles. Lowe's got a cover down to keep a backdoor cutter out of the lane, and he's able to cut off a passing lane. Then he rotates back up and goes to the other side of the court to contest a three-pointer really well and force a miss. I believe an air ball, if not a really near air ball. And that was just one example of the ways in which they are clearly communicating better, but also that these guys are understanding how to play with one another better on the defensive end. And that was a big improvement from the first half, in which, there wasn't that clean of a rotation going all the way around when the ball moved, or when players moved all around the court, and when they got stressed as a defense to move from side to side. And they made a big improvement on that in the second half. And, there's still stuff to improve on, but that was, as good as an effort as you can hope for, I think, against such a good offensive team. Like I said, this is one of the better offensive teams among mid-major teams, but I think just in college basketball as well. I think, do we have a couple questions in here? Byron, if you have a question, feel free to throw it right in there. Be happy to answer it for you. We try to keep it to basketball on this one, a little post game, but whatever you got, I'll be happy to answer what I can for you. But we can move on a little bit, and we can talk about the some individual performances that I thought were really well done. We'll start with this game was kind of led by the backcourt for Pitt. I mean, it was interesting just watching Florida Gulf Coast kind of get led by their big guys who really affected the game in a big way. Pitt's guards really controlled the game for them. We'll just run off a few stats. Ish Leggett, 36 minutes, 17 points, 6 of 12 from the field, 7 rebounds, 5 assists, and no turnovers. It's in addition to the really, really good perimeter defense he was playing, had 2 steals and a block. Bub Carrington, 37 minutes, 19 points on 5 of 9 shooting, 7 of 7 from the free throw line on a night when Pitt really, really needed that, and then 7 assists and 4 rebounds as well. And we'll close it out with a guy who I thought really changed the game in a huge way, even though his counting stats weren't as gaudy as some other guys, but Jalen Lowe, his first big game as a Panther, 12 points, 5 of 9 from the field, 2 of 4 from 3, a rebound, 2 assists in 15 minutes. I thought he was great. I thought he was fantastic. He was a catalyst. There was a moment in this game where Florida Gulf Coast tied it at 30. I believe there was a little over 5 minutes to play in the second half. Yep, there was 5:04. Rivers scores a layup to make it 30-30, and immediately from the rest of for the remainder of the first half, Pitt goes on a 15-4 run, and I think it was started, almost entirely by Lowe. We've seen Leggett and we've seen Carrington do this kind of stuff, have these kind of performances, but this was Lowe's first really big game. And you could see from the jump, he came out with confidence. It wasn't just how he shot the ball. And I think, Jeff Capel and Ish Leggett both kind of attributed his better game, compared to his first two, to just being able to make shots. And that gave him, especially making shots early, gave him some confidence that he needed to to keep going throughout the rest of the game and keep playing well and trust that, as Ish Leggett said, that he belonged out there. But I think you could even see it in just how he handled the ball, how he passed, how he ran in offense, and then like I referenced on the defensive end, he just knew where to be. He knew what plays to make. He knew what the team needed from him and what the system called for in that moment, and it all kind of played out and unfolded and made for a really good, complete game from him. I think the thing that was most notable to me coming out of the press conferences was that I asked Jeff Capel, like Ish said, that once he made a couple shots, I think he made his first two, if I'm not mistaken. But once Lowe saw those go through the basket, you could like it felt like he could notice that, or he made his two of his first three. But like it felt like he could kind of notice that Lowe played with a little more confidence and began to look like began to feel like he belonged out there. And Jeff Capel said that he didn't really agree. He thought that Lowe has always kind of played with a kind of confidence that he belonged out there and had played well through his first two games. He just couldn't make shots. And that kind of colored how we might have viewed his first couple of games, which I thought were a little rough. But, he did everything tonight. And I think he was boosted by the fact that he could shoot pretty well tonight and that the shots were falling. This kid is smooth, man. He's smooth in just about everything he does. He's got nice shooting form. He can pass really well. He clearly knows how to run and pick and roll. I think he just, in these first couple games, maybe felt a little overwhelmed by, his first taste of college action. And he's starting to settle in. He's starting to figure out what he needs to do and what he's good at and where he fits in with this team, because he makes the bench a million times deeper when he's playing well, when he's on, when he can score. It allows them to run a few different lineups. They ran a lot of 3-guard lineups with him and Carrington and Leggett, which I thought were really effective, especially in this game, just for this matchup. Lowe was really good, and it's just really encouraging, because I think after those first couple games, we thought, we thought, okay, Carrington's a star, he's ready right away, but Lowe maybe needs a little bit more time, and that that's true to a certain extent, I think, still, but not to the same extent that we maybe thought it was. Lowe's ready to contribute right away, and I think that's pretty clear, especially after tonight. This was the toughest team that Pitt has faced so far. It was a guard-heavy team that was supposed to challenge him really in a big way, and Lowe played his best game of his young career. So I think that was one of the most encouraging things. That was my biggest takeaway from this game. Not just that they got tested, but that a guy who needed a little bit of time to really catch up with this game and catch up to being a college player was able to play his best game. Moving on, if again, I'll take any questions that anyone has. Feel free to throw them in the chat. I'll get to as many as I can, but if no one's got anything, I'll keep moving through my notes. Cold shooting night for Blake Hinson overall. I got his numbers right in front of me. He did score 18 points, 6 of 15 from the field, and 3 of 10 from 3-point range, and then also only 3 of 6 from the free throw line. It was not his best game. He started real hot. I think he made 3 of his first 4, then missed about 7 in a row. But in crunch time, he was good, and he was clutch, and he did a lot of different things that I think the team needed. He responded to what the game was giving him and what he was giving to the game, if that makes any sense. Like, he noticed his shot. He knew when his shots needed to come, when he needed to be assertive offensively. There was a stretch in the second half. It was on his 8th attempt after he had missed 7 in a row. He pulls a confident 3 from the far wing, makes it, comes back down the floor in the next possession, and off an offensive rebound, drives straight into his defender and puts a layup home. And he was really fired up about it. He's talking trash, running back down the court, and then plays a good defensive possession the next time down. And it was at a critical juncture in the game. It was when Pitt was trying to extend it back to a double-digit lead. Florida Gulf Coast had been making some real inroads on that lead in the second half. And he was a willing teammate. He was a good teammate in the second half. He got pulled. He didn't play the final 10 and a half minutes, but I think we know Blake. Blake was up and cheering for his teammates. He was all around the action with his energy, and he was cheering guys on. There was no sulking because he had a bad game. I mean, that's just not Blake, and that's not how he plays. And he didn't let maybe a cold shooting night or even a cold stretch. I mean, he still had 18 points that was second on the team, and he had 5 rebounds as well. I think he had a steal as well. Like he did a lot of good things despite a pretty cold offensive night. So I mean, it's pretty incredible how this team continues to not get the full Blake Hinson experience and still pull away from teams, win in impressive ways, and get more from the quote unquote supporting cast. I mean, I say that with kind of a qualifier on it because I think there was no hiding behind it. Hinson was the best player on this team. Everyone called him that. Everyone treated him like that, respected him as a leader in that way. And through these first 3 games, I mean, he's had one really, really good night and a couple of okay nights, and one maybe subpar night. And Pitt has survived them all and looked really impressive doing it. And that speaks to their depth, but it also speaks to Hinson's ability to play off of his teammates and understand what the game needs at that moment. Byron, we'll get to your question right now. It's kind of an all-encompassing one, but when will we get insight into how competitive collectives supporting Pitt are and how they decide on which players to support and how much? I mean, there's been a few details that came out about this during football season a little bit earlier in the year when that Oakland Originals thing first was announced, if you remember that, and partnered with Alliance 412. They announced an initiative that would basically give every Pitt player a stipend. There were kind of degrees of payments depending on experience and things like that, and your class. So I'd look into that. There's good reporting from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette from my pals Chris Carter and Noah Hiles. I would check that out. I can tell you, I mean, look, they're not competing with schools like Texas A&M or even, USC in terms of like the amount of dollars they're giving them, but there's clearly been a step up in how Pitt's attacking this and how they're trying to approach NIL, even if it's not necessarily on the same level as some of these other huge schools. So, we're never going to get insight into, Pitt thinks that they need, $500,000 to retain Gavin Bartholomew. These are not real numbers. I'm just kind of spitballing here. We don't really know what those numbers, how they're allocating resources in that way, that we just really won't ever get a whole lot of insight into that. I'd have to imagine, unless something crazy happens. But, I think we know Pitt's using it. I think they're using it to a larger degree. And it's just not really going to be on the same level as a lot of these schools that are dominating the NIL world, that are making all those headlines about NIL that you read about. So hope that answers your question, but I appreciate it. Getting back to the game a little bit, kind of my last note that I've got is just on William Jeffress. He was huge, and I think he's really rounding into form as the player that we thought he'd be, especially coming into this year. But I think, even just kind of when he arrived at Pitt as a whole, I mean, I remember the scouting report on him coming out of high school was just elite defensive ability, a really incredible athlete, a guy who can jump out of the gym, block a ton of shots, and is versatile defensively. He showed that entire skill set tonight. In the second half, he was guarding just about everyone on the floor and doing a good job of it. He's athletic enough to defend on the perimeter. He's got the kind of weight and length and leaping ability, to put it simply, to defend the perimeter as well. I venture to say he's never really going to be the kind of scorer that maybe he was certainly not in high school, but even kind of understanding that there's a regression for everyone from high school to college. Jeffress is not going to be a huge offensive threat, but he is going to be one of the better defensive players in the ACC, if not in the country. I mean, I think that part is pretty clear. Pat Chambers, the head coach of Florida Gulf Coast, former Penn State head coach, who actually recruited Jeffress, said that he remembered him and called him an all-star in his role. And I think that's a perfect way of describing it, is that Will is so he's not old. Uh, that's not how you describe it, because he still is only 20 years old. It feels like he's been here for 4 years. But he was 17 when he arrived at Pitt. He reclassed to join this team. And uh, with time, he has really started to figure out what he's good at, what he can contribute. And he's embraced that life as someone who does the dirty work, who defensive rebounds and blocks shots and plays great defense. And I think the part that is the factor, the element that has made him so comfortable doing that, is that there's a real appreciation from his head coach and from his teammates for the energy that he brings, for the defense that he plays, for all of the little things that he does. And I think that's crucial to having glue guys. Is there has to be appreciation for glue guys, or else they are going to start trying to shoot. They're going to start trying to be more than what they are. And Will Jeffress is very secure, I think, in who he is, and that really came across tonight when he, sat on the bench for most of the first half. But when the team really needed a defensive spark, he was right in there to deliver. He only played 6 minutes in the first half, but he played 15 in the second. When Pitt was really trying to turn around their defensive effort, Will Jeffress was there to deliver. And just like I said, Lowe makes the bench so much deeper. The addition, the return of William Jeffress from injury, makes this bench so much deeper for Pitt in a way that they really need, and especially if they're going to be the kind of defensive-minded team that I think they are, and that I think they really can be. Jeffress has got to be a huge part of that, and he's almost a little bit like a closer, in baseball. I think that's a pretty, like, the role that I kind of outlined for you here. Him coming in the second half to help Pitt really lock down defensively when they felt like they needed to, when the game was on the line, when it could pivot in one way or another. That's what Jeffress can be. He can be a stopper, a guy who can change momentum by himself, not necessarily with his offense, but with his defense. And that's a pretty special ability. And I think I'm excited to see what Jeffress can do down the stretch of this year, because there's so many fantastic offensive players in this league, and Jeffress is going to get matched up on all of them every time that he plays. So really excited for what we see from him, excited for what we saw from the Panthers tonight, just as a whole, and excited to see as the competition kind of heats up. They get Jacksonville on Friday, another Ken Pom team in about the 260s, I think, as of right now. But then it's 5 straight against high major opponents, against teams in the Power 5 or the Power 6, however you want to define it. So this is a crucial point for the Panthers. This was a big win, and this was a really good step forward as they get ready for arguably the most difficult part of their schedule coming up next week. But appreciate everyone who tuned in tonight. I'm going to log off and call this a night. But again, I appreciate everyone tuning in, providing their thoughts, asking questions, and I hope to see you all again on the next Inside Pitt post-game report. We'll do one after the Boston College football game on Thursday. But again, appreciate you all tuning in with me, working through some technical difficulties, and I'll see you all next time. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube. That's youtube.com/@InsideThePanthers. And I'll have some more reporting and writing on this game up tomorrow on InsideThePanthers.com. So make sure you check that out as well. Have a good night, everyone. Thanks.